just
Yeah.
because my family's also Bills fans, and I feel like they're just like crazy Bills Mafia. My sister might have the same one. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask her.
Yeah.
She has,
Not a huge,
she's more festive
not
than I am.
not a mafia per se, but definitely a Bills fan.
You're not like slamming tables and stuff?
No,
No?
I prefer not to. I like
Oh,
my body
okay.
intact.
Mm, all right. All right, we'll let it go.
I can do enough damage to myself without slamming myself on a table. So
Fair enough. All right. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Can you share how you got into digital forensics?
yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. My journey into forensics is I started off in the medical field for a number of years. We went camping one summer, met some great people, started talking around the campfire about like what we do for a living, things like that. And I actually met Jessica. She started talking about what she did for a living. And I looked at her and I said, I want to do that. She's like, really? I was like, yeah, I kind of burnt out in the medical field. I was doing a lot of like in-house like IT work. We had like a third-party IT company, and they just didn't get things fixed in time. So I started tinkering with like laptops and all the technology that we had in the office, trying to fix it, make it faster. Um, and it was okay. It was interesting, but it just wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So Jessica and I got talking. She invited me over to her house to start teaching me a little bit about like hex binary. And she's like, if you can get hex and binary, you can do digital forensics. So she's like, I want to make sure you can get this first. I'm like, okay. So started teaching that and going over that, picked it up pretty quickly. And then she had an idea of me auditing one of her classes that she was teaching in mobile forensics. So I jumped on, started going through some of her classes. And in the middle of one of her classes, I just signed up for college. And I was like, I'm just going to dive in. Might as well. There's no time like the present. And I just signed up and started, I think, like a month later.
That's so awesome. So what initially sparked your interest in IoT forensics?
I really like trying to tear things apart and figure out how they work. I have been that way since I was younger. Anything that I can try to fix, I do. I just want to know how it works, why it works. It's really started when I was working in the doctor's office, and one of the doctors was talking about this Facebook portal mini and how he got one for his mom so that they can share pictures, do video chatting that was easier for her to do. Um, so I was talking to Jessica about it one day. I'm like, this is such an interesting thing because how many people would have this in their house? And she goes, Sarah, why don't you do the research on it? I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do that. So I started doing the research with Nicole Odom and Jessica, and then we presented at the SANS for Summit what our findings were. So that was actually really interesting. And from there, just anything IoT, just hand it to me and I'll take a look at it and see if I can figure it out.
I kind of jumped a little bit. I probably should have asked what is IoT, Internet of Things, like what classifies IoT?
No. So IoT devices are things that, like are smart devices that can connect to Bluetooth, they can connect to Wi-Fi. They can be things like wearable technology. They can just be things from like an Echo Dot that's in your house. If you have one of the robot vacuum cleaners that most of us have in our houses these days, those are all considered IoT devices. TVs, smart TVs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my mom actually has one of those skylight frames, so
Yeah.
similar to like the Facebook Mini. So we all upload, whatever pictures that we want, but I can guarantee that thing is probably not secure.
Yeah, most of them aren't, surprisingly, but yeah, just from what their target audience with some of these are, I'm surprised they're not more secure. But we found out with the Facebook portal mini that data is easily accessible. So
So jumping back to the IACIS presentation that you mentioned, you presented on the Aura Ring. So can you kind of tell us what investigators should be aware about or aware of what when they're looking at these devices or coming across these devices or some of the findings you came across?
yeah, so Aura Ring, when I started the research on that one, it was really because people weren't wearing rings for health conscious reasons until COVID. They started wanting to like know their body temperatures because it was an indicator if they were coming down with the virus, things like that. So Aura actually became really popular during COVID. So when looking at data and investigators can look at, they're not thinking a ring could have data potential on them. They may, see as a cell phone and see like this aura. They're not sure what it is, why go after it, things like that. But it actually contains a whole lot of data. So when I did the research, I did it using an Android. It was a Google Pixel 6, I believe, and plethora of data. You get timestamps, you get heart rates, activity, workouts, sleep patterns, body temperatures. And I think body temperatures can be huge. Timestamps are definitely something that investigators would want to be aware of, that they're pretty accurate. And their timestamps are not like minute by minute, they're in second intervals. There's no specific pattern to them. So there can be, a jump from like 1 second to another, and things can drastically change in that time frame. Accessing it, I think it's been one of the challenges, because the Oura Ring itself is made out of titanium and a polymer resin. So they wouldn't necessarily be able to get data directly from the device unless they were to tear it down and maintain its integrity, which is really hard to do. But just understanding that data is stored on the mobile device, understanding that there is a cloud-based acquisition that they can, get a warrant for. And there's a lot of data available there too.
So what type of advice can you give investigators when they're looking at it? So you just said you're not tearing the device down, so you're going through the mobile app. Is that
The
right?
mobile application. Yep, the mobile application. But the nice thing about Aura is actually they shared health information bidirectionally. So they share it with Google Fit, Stravia, and Health Connect. So having a mobile device, you can actually get all of that data from those other applications as well. So it's not just going to be the package that you find for Aura. It's going to be in other fitness databases as well on the mobile device.
That's so interesting. I wear a watch everywhere
Mhm.
because I also track a lot of random things, but more specifically, I track the number of steps that I take throughout the day.
Mhm.
So I am always interested in wearable devices, and I'm always surprised about when people say Internet of Things, right? I'm like, oh, I'm not a smart home. Like, I don't have, a lot of these devices. Like, I don't have a fancy thermostat. I don't have like an Alexa or anything like that.
Mhm.
So, for me, I'm always surprised. Like, when I look around, I'm like, oh, there's actually things that are just like constantly listening and recording just random things I do
Yeah.
throughout the house, which is disturbing. So
Yeah.
how has the increasing prevalence of IoT devices impacted digital forensic investigations?
I think in general, just how many are available now, and trying to understand and identify what they are, what could be available in somebody's house or on somebody's person, um, when something happens, and understanding like that how the data is stored. Um, Technology is always changing. It can change from one generation to another. The applications are always updating. So I think the more IoT devices that we have, I think the more challenging it's going to become for investigators, for them to understand like what data could potentially be available on these things.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a ton of challenges around it. So, in terms of data integrity, how are we preserving that so that you can, submit this stuff to court?
I think a lot of it's going to be more like people doing research and understanding how the data is stored, writing papers about it. I'm finishing up the research for the iOS portion because I've already done the Android, and then we'll, I'll get the paper out there and get data available out for people to look at and be able to compare data with. But I think a lot of it is just anybody just doing the research and publishing it. I think sharing with the digital forensic community, and having things published and out there and available, I think will really help in court for admissibility, especially when we're doing like comparisons with like, there's a new Aura Ring out, actually like a Gen 4, comparing what is seen in the Gen 3 versus the Gen 4, and things like that, even across all different types of IoT and wearables, and any type of IoT device. Like I have a Echo Spot that I tore down in September, and I just tore one down the other day, and they're completely different chipsets. So it's just understanding all of those different types of things and keeping up to date on the technology as much as possible.
So you're documenting this. You're writing blogs or you're writing a paper. Where is this? Like, where can our listeners find this information?
So I will be posting some blog information, but I'm working on a white paper to compare for Aura Ring for the iOS and the Android.
Oh, that is so fun. You also did a
Mm.
blog post on the Google Pixel, right?
Yes, on the Google Pixel, there's how to do the bootloader unlock and then how to root it. Whenever I set up an Android, I'd like to document how I did it, and that way other people can do the same thing.
I feel like that's the only reason why I bring it up is because I feel like it's the most popular blog. I see it reshared everywhere. So I'm like, Sarah's
I
everywhere.
think I think yeah, during like when like when I'm seating or trying to pick a phone to do, I like to try to pick one that's common so that we can see where the data is pretty quickly. And I think the Google Pixel has been tested, tried and true over the years, and even with updates, we're still able to do the same bootloader unlock and rooting process. So that doesn't change where iOS can change drastically in their jailbreaks to be able to get full file systems. So
Yeah, so kind of like just jumping back, sorry, I'm like all over the place, but
you're fine.
just jumping back to IoT. So what's the most common types of evidence that you're retrieving from these devices?
We're seeing user data if it's not encrypted. A lot of the Google products have the user data encrypted. So we're running into that challenge. We're trying to work through some of that encryption right now because the passwords, the master keys that they're saying are available, it's not evident of what that password is. So we're trying to work through some of that encryption right now. But on the other devices, like on the Echo, I'm seeing like that where I changed the wake word, where I set music, where I changed like what music I played, what I added to my shopping list. We're seeing that kind of data. We see a lot more in like drones and the VR type devices, what the user was looking at, what they did, what actions they took. I think just because of like the USB connection and the SD cards, and then the data that's available when we actually image the devices.
Okay. So when you're saying that there's different gens that are coming out and the encryption and all those challenges,
Mhm.
obviously these are advancements that these technology companies are constantly evolving. So how do
Yeah,
you see that impacting digital forensics in the future?
I think it really honestly, I think it's going to be more challenging with encryption to get through some of these devices, especially from an investigative perspective, because I can take a device that right out of the box and try to figure out the encryption, but that doesn't mean that the data is going to be not touched. Like the integrity of the data could be modified once I start messing with the encryption part of it. So during investigations, IoT devices can lose data if we're trying to get through certain encryptions. Um, so I think that's going to be presenting a challenge. I think not having a lot of IoT forensic tools is a challenge because the technology is always changing. Not having great ways to image these devices without taking the chip off, things like that. I think that's going to make it a lot more difficult because even with chip offs, some of the partitions are encrypted. So that makes it really challenging.
So what do you recommend to people when they're starting, like when they're looking at wearables and stuff like that? Where do they even start?
So for me, starting for wearables, I actually took an iPad rehab training with Jessa Jones. It was a great training on how to understand and read a board because there's technology, there's things like you can JTAG, stuff like that. So being able to understand the board itself, I think really helps. And I think that's where people really should start when working with these, like understanding what chips are, doing the research to figure out what is where and how to do it. Um, as far as like tools, usually I recommend like chip readers, hot air workstations, soldering stations. Those are pretty good places to start. And iPad rehab training really goes and trains you and use how to use that type of equipment so that when you go home, you can actually just do it yourself.
That training that they do as well, iPad rehab, is it
Mm.
in person or is it online? Like
It's in
what's the setup?
person and it's great. It's an entire week of just understanding the board. You're doing hands-on technical work. You're doing chip offs. You're desoldering your soldering, like micro soldering. They teach you how to take apart like the newer phones, the older phones, and still keep them intact because they have them for customers as well. So you don't want to break them while you're there. But and you can bring your own. Like if you're struggling with some of the devices that you have in house, you can bring them with you, and they'll help you work through them.
Oh, that's genius. Okay. So I always wondered how exactly, I've obviously never taken any of their classes because I'm asking you these questions. But I always wondered if they were in person or virtual because I would imagine like when you're doing, especially like hardware engineering, it's hard to teach that virtually. So,
Yeah, it's great. They have workstations for everybody. It's just an amazing course, to be honest, especially for IoT.
well, we'll have to pop that resource like in the description of
Yeah,
this video so people
yeah,
can find it for sure.
definitely.
And I know that she's been around, Jessa has been around for a long time doing these courses
Yeah.
as well, right?
Yep. Yes. And Hexordy is actually partnering with iPad Rehab to do a training, I believe, over the summer, um, to do like how to retrieve the data from the devices.
Oh, okay. So they're gonna teach you like how to like take care of damaged devices and
And
then
then get
processing
the
that
data
data.
off, and then the
Oh,
analysis portion of it. So
oh, that'll be so awesome. Okay. Well, great partnership. Yay.
yeah.
So we'll have to find out those details and put those in the
Yeah, I
description
think it
too.
really stemmed from me taking that course because like I just could not say so there was just so many great things that came out of that course that I think when I talked to Jessica about it afterwards, and she's like, I think we need to do something with them. I'm like, you do. It's great.
Yeah, and it sounds intimidating, like too. Well, so like hardware engineering and like doing chip offs and stuff like that sounds extremely intimidating, but it's an extremely important skill set to have. There's obviously other ways that people can learn that as well through like different organizations or maybe their employer.
Sure.
But I did talk to Shannon Burgess, who focuses on vehicle forensics, and
Mhm.
he also is doing chip offs constantly, which um I have never examined a vehicle before, so I was just like really intrigued by listening to how intricate like some of those details are, just getting that data off.
Oh
So
yeah, definitely.
yeah, absolutely. Sounds like a great opportunity for people to learn it, because
Yeah.
it goes in all different types of devices. So okay, so in terms of the like research coming down, right? You
Mhm.
did Aura Ring. Is there any other projects that you have in the future? Or anything either around like IoT or even wearables?
Yep. So I'm still working currently on a project for IoT devices for data extraction. But in 2025, I have some more research coming on different wearables that are out there and available. I'm going to be doing some comparison about what data is available, how accurate it is from one to the next. I think that'll help actually completely in our field and understanding, the accuracy of some of these as well.
Are you planning on documenting that in blogs or like a white paper
That'll
or
be
something?
documented and hopefully talk at techno security. I submitted for that, so I'm hoping to be able to present some of that data there.
Oh, awesome. Well, that'll be great. So, keeping it right in holiday step, obviously you have your virtual background and you're very festive with your Bill's sweater. Do you have any other holiday traditions other than, supporting Bill's Mafia that you would like to share?
Um, no, really, we just kids and I like to make cookies. We set a date every year. Their aunts, cousins come over, and we just have a day of baking and snacking and having fun before the holidays. And then on the holidays, we pass them out, share with everybody. So my kids enjoy it. They
Oh,
come
kind
up
of
with
like
new
a
and
cookie exchange?
no, we just make a bunch of different ones, and then because we make too many, we have to get them out of our house or
It's
we will
probably
eat them
safer that
all.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The kids like to come up with new creative ways to decorate, sugar cookies and stuff like that every year. So this year I was told I have to make a frosting from scratch. That was the request.
Oh, what kind of frosting is it? Like, is it
Uh,
like a cream cheese base or?
I haven't figured out which one I'm doing yet. I usually buy the ones from like Walmart in the pre-made package and tell the kids to have at it because that way it makes less of a mess. But this year will be a little different. We'll see what happens.
So do y'all do like like piping and
Yeah.
like all the details?
Yeah, we try to, and then the kids will usually just take like like a butter knife or something, just start spreading it on once they have done like 6 cookies, and then they're done for the day.
Sounds about right.
Yes, then
And
I end
then
up
you're
having to
then you're
decorate
left
like
there to
50
do all
cookies.
the rest of the
Right.
labor. Yeah. We did something similar where we made donuts, and I felt like it was more work prepping and getting everything ready, and it took them like 10 seconds to decorate, and then I was just left with everything. I was like, great.
Yeah.
Thanks,
My
guys.
daughter wants to do brownie cookies because she's not a fan of sugar cookies. So I've got to find a good brownie cookie recipe so she can decorate them this year.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
I always like the chocolate chip brownie cookies,
Mhm.
like where you put the drops of brownies in it. So
Yeah.
good.
I'm gonna have to
So
look into
what
that.
is your favorite cookie that you make?
I actually like making Oreo balls. It's not even like a cookie. It's just that those are my favorite.
What is that?
It's like Oreo with cream cheese, and you blend it together, and then you put it in like melted chocolate and let it cool.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
I'm like drooling. It
They're
sounds so
absolutely
good.
delicious.
So it's just like a little like just it sounds so easy to
Almost
make too.
like a cake pop with Oreo and
Mm,
cream cheese.
sounds so good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll be sure to send you my address in case you have extras and you just need to ship them. I will be happy to accept.
I'm not sure how they'd hold up, but it depends on the weather. I don't want them to
Oh
melt
my
on me.
gosh. They'll probably be froze.
Probably. That's true.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Really
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for
I'm gonna
having
pop
me.
in some of your links in the description for the blogs and stuff like that so people can find them.
Okay.
Um, and then, if there's any other resources or questions people have, make sure that we, interact with everybody as they ask them. So
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much. I was enjoyed being on your podcast. It was awesome.